Kim Langwell was born on December 24, 1965, in Houston, Texas. She spent her childhood in that city, growing up with her parents and sister, and was recognized for her determination from an early age. At the age of 18, Kim welcomed her daughter Tiffany into the world. However, shortly thereafter, Tiffany's father abandoned them, leaving Kim to raise her daughter alone. In search of a fresh start, she relocated to a town named Beaumont, aiming to establish a stable life for herself and Tiffany. Initially, Kim faced significant challenges, often balancing 3 jobs simultaneously to make ends meet. Eventually, she secured a promising position at a local oil refinery, which allowed her more time to devote to her daughter. It was at this job that she met Ken, and the two soon began dating, ultimately becoming engaged and looking forward to their future together. On July 9, 1999, 34-year-old Kim planned to enjoy an evening at a restaurant with Ken and her 15-year-old daughter Tiffany. That day, she was expected to finish her work shift around 5:00 p.m., return home, and then head to the restaurant shortly thereafter. At approximately 5:15, Kim called Tiffany to discuss their plans, mentioning that she had some errands to run before returning home and might arrive a bit late. By 6:30, Ken had arrived at Kim's house, but for reasons unknown, she had not yet returned. He and Tiffany awaited her arrival. Efforts to reach her by phone were unsuccessful, which was quite atypical for her. As time went on without any indication of Kim's whereabouts, Kim's concern grew. Eventually, around 10 p.m., he resolved to look for her. He drove along the route she typically took from work to home, checked local shops, and visited other potential locations she might have frequented, but found no evidence of her presence. His search continued until he noticed Kim's car parked outside a pharmacy, yet Kim was nowhere to be seen. He scanned the vicinity in hopes of locating her, but there were no signs of her near the pharmacy. Initially, Ken speculated that she might have changed her dinner plans and gone elsewhere, or perhaps left with a friend, leaving her car behind. Despite the implausibility of these thoughts, he reassured himself that she was likely safe and returned home. The following morning, Ken revisited the pharmacy and discovered that Kim's car remained in the parking lot. She had not returned home overnight and had not reached out to anyone. At that moment, his concern escalated into fear, leading him to conclude that something was seriously amiss. He decided to contact the police. Upon receiving the report, the officers promptly initiated their investigation, beginning with an examination of Kim's vehicle. There were no indications of a struggle or blood inside, but they did uncover something troubling: her cell phone had been left behind. Subsequently, they interviewed Kim's daughter, Tiffany, who had been the last person to communicate with her mother. Tiffany revealed that after work, her mother intended to visit a man named Terry, with whom she had been involved. For 7 years, Kim and Terry maintained a relationship, despite having ended it over 6 months prior. Terry continued to reach out to Kim occasionally. One evening, he requested her assistance with a repair project, needing someone to hold shelves while he mounted them on the wall. Tiffany mentioned that she had called Terry on the night her mother went missing, but he informed her that Kim had only visited briefly before leaving. When the police interviewed Kim's friends, they discovered that her relationship with Terry had been tumultuous. Initially, her friends viewed Terry as a decent individual when Kim began dating him, but that perception quickly changed. Over time, Terry's behavior grew increasingly aggressive and controlling. He frequently called Kim, demanding to know her whereabouts and companions. He insisted on her compliance and often instigated arguments over trivial matters. Ultimately, Kim resolved to end the relationship, but the breakup proved challenging. Terry attempted to prevent her from leaving in various ways, sometimes promising to change and at other times threatening her with harm if she chose to depart. Despite his manipulative tactics, Kim successfully extricated herself from the relationship. Following the breakup, Terry did not resort to extreme measures to win her back, yet he maintained contact. Kim feared completely severing ties, concerned that doing so might provoke him to harm her or her daughter. Through discussions with Kim's friends, the police uncovered even more troubling aspects of her relationship with Terry. Shortly before their separation, he had exhibited physical violence, including an incident where he choked her during an argument. After that event, Kim became increasingly wary. There was a genuine concern that Terry might escalate his behavior, leading her to confide in her friends. She expressed that if she were to go missing, they should search for her in Terry's backyard. This, combined with the fact that Kim had visited Terry shortly before her disappearance, prompted investigators to scrutinize him as a potential suspect. When questioned, Terry denied any involvement, stating that Kim had only come by briefly to assist him with mounting shelves before leaving. He further claimed that approximately 4 hours after her visit, he went to a local bar and spent the remainder of the evening there. This left Terry without an alibi for the time frame in which Kim went missing, and his motives appeared evident. Investigators obtained a warrant to search his residence and thoroughly examined his property, but found no evidence, no signs of Kim, no personal items, no blood, and nothing to connect Terry to her disappearance. Forensic experts also inspected Kim's vehicle but uncovered no clues. Ultimately, law enforcement was unable to find any evidence linking Terry to her disappearance or clarifying what had happened to Kim. However, a new suspect soon emerged. Kim's friends disclosed that she had frequently voiced concerns about her boss, Frank. Shortly after she began her employment, Frank began to exhibit inappropriate behavior, openly flirting with her despite being married. Over time, he escalated his advances by sending her love letters, totaling more than 100, in an attempt to persuade her to enter into a relationship with him. This situation caused significant distress for Kim. Kim felt a persistent sense of unease, fearing that Frank might terminate her employment one day simply because her feelings did not align with his. In fact, her discomfort regarding the situation led her to entrust all of Frank's letters to her close friends, asking them to keep the letters safe in case anything were to happen to her. Upon reviewing the letters, the police found that their content revealed Frank's intense obsession with Kim. Furthermore, Kim had confided in her friends that Frank would frequently drive by her house multiple times a day, and on occasion, he would park across the street to observe her. Adding to the strangeness of the situation was the fact that Ken, Kim's current boyfriend, also worked at the same company, yet this did not seem to deter Frank in the slightest. Given these circumstances, investigators began to view Frank as a serious suspect. Kim had disappeared shortly after leaving work, and Frank had a potential motive that spanned over a month. His obsession could have escalated to the point of abduction, or he might have feared that Kim would disclose his behavior to their employer or to his wife. Either possibility could have posed significant consequences for him, providing a compelling reason to silence her. When the police decided to interrogate Frank, he asserted that he did not harbor any strong feelings for Kim, characterizing his emotions as a mere fleeting crush that had long since faded. He also denied having written her any letters, despite the fact that investigators had possession of all of them. Frank's behavior raised suspicions among the detectives, who were reluctant to accept his statements at face value. He also claimed to have an alibi, but this only served to heighten their doubts. Frank presented a receipt from a store indicating his presence there at 6:56 p.m. However, theoretically, he still had sufficient time to abduct Kim prior to that time. Later that evening, Frank hosted a poker game with friends who corroborated his alibi, confirming he was with them during that period. Nevertheless, there remained a gap of over an hour between Kim's departure from work and the commencement of Frank's alibi, a timeframe for which he could not provide an explanation. Despite their investigations, the police were unable to uncover any evidence linking Frank to Kim's disappearance, prompting them to redirect their attention to other possible leads. Investigators sought surveillance footage from cameras along Kim's route from her workplace to Terry's residence and subsequently to the parking lot where her vehicle was located, but this endeavor proved fruitless. They also examined her phone records, revealing that her last call was made to her daughter, with no further activity recorded afterward. The detectives then focused on search operations, combing through the city and its outskirts, with volunteers joining the efforts. The police issued a public appeal for anyone with information to come forward. However, these initiatives did not yield any significant progress. Concurrently, reports regarding Terry's peculiar behavior began to emerge shortly after Kim's disappearance. Her sister, suspecting Terry, decided to confront him at his home. Terry, however, displayed a lack of concern for Kim's situation and even went so far as to mock her family, showing no signs of empathy for the missing woman. Another noteworthy detail arose from Terry's employment. An employee reported that the owner of a small business, whose office was situated on his property, had workers frequently visiting. On the day Kim went missing, this employee arrived at Terry's residence at approximately 5:50 p.m. and noticed Kim's car parked outside. However, he did not see Kim herself, despite the fact that she had left work around 5:15 p.m. This discrepancy raised significant concerns. Terry had asserted that she only stopped by for a brief visit, yet the employee's account clearly contradicted this claim. Shortly thereafter, the police received additional information from multiple witnesses who reported seeing a tow truck belonging to Terry in the vicinity of the parking lot where Kim's vehicle was ultimately discovered. According to these witnesses, the tow truck was present around 6:45 p.m., which did not correspond with Terry's alibi of being at home throughout the evening. Despite these troubling details, there was still no concrete evidence connecting Terry to Kim's disappearance. Investigators continued to seek further clues, but the case persisted for years without resolution. Kim's family remained convinced of Terry's involvement in her disappearance, and by that time, hope for her safe return had diminished. Additionally, Kim's sister informed the police that Terry exhibited increasingly odd behavior, including a phone call in which he mentioned his intention to undergo a polygraph test. Terry sought to exonerate himself, yet he nonchalantly remarked that he would likely fail in that endeavor. Additionally, he would occasionally reach out to the family to inquire if they had received any news from Kim, as though she had merely taken a temporary leave rather than disappearing without a trace. To compound the unsettling nature of the situation, an individual had been making silent phone calls to Kim's relatives for years. The family suspected Terry was responsible for these calls, but once again, law enforcement found no evidence linking him to Kim's disappearance, which had now been 3 years. Another peculiar incident involving Terry reignited suspicions. He approached Tiffany on the street, inquiring whether she had heard from her mother. Kim's sister intervened, instructing him to leave. In response, Terry remarked on his polygraph test, stating, "Aren't you curious about which question I failed? It was the one regarding whether I killed Kim." This prompted Kim's family to contact the police once more, but the authorities reiterated that without concrete evidence, they could not confirm Terry's involvement. Consequently, the investigation stagnated. 8 years later, the case was reopened, and investigators began a thorough review, but it yielded no new leads. By that time, Terry had ceased cooperating with law enforcement and outright refused to answer any further inquiries. This situation persisted for many years until early 2024, when a true crime documentary team from Oxygen expressed interest in Kim's case. They decided to produce an episode focused on her disappearance and initiated their own investigation, interviewing Kim's friends and family before shifting their focus to the 2 primary suspects, including Frank. Terry Frank consented to address all inquiries posed by the investigators. However, even 25 years following Kim's disappearance, his conduct remained notably peculiar. He persistently denied any romantic pursuit of Kim or the writing of love letters to her, reiterating that he had no connection to her disappearance. With minimal advancements in the case, the investigative team redirected their attention towards Terry. In contrast to Frank, Terry declined to engage in conversation with them. Undeterred, the team resolved to confront him in person. Upon their arrival at his residence, Terry observed them through a window and promptly attempted to flee through the back door, seemingly trying to escape in his vehicle. Unfortunately for him, the crew obstructed his route, leaving Terry with no alternative but to respond to their inquiries. He asserted that he had not seen them and was not attempting to evade them, despite his actions indicating otherwise. Terry further claimed he had no motive to harm Kim, stating that her departure did not trouble him at all. This assertion directly contradicted accounts from Kim's friends and family, who reported that she had frequently mentioned threats and erratic behavior from Terry. The situation took an even more bizarre turn when Terry began to contradict his earlier statements. Initially, he informed the police that Kim had visited to assist him in putting up shelves. Now, he asserted that she had merely come to retrieve her remaining belongings from his home. This inconsistency drew the attention of investigators, leading them to reopen the case. Following the airing of the documentary, prosecutors decided to take decisive action, preparing to charge Terry with murder, despite the absence of concrete evidence linking him directly to Kim's disappearance. By this stage, very few doubted his involvement. Investigators hoped that new evidence would emerge during the trial or that the jury would consider Terry's suspicious behavior sufficient for a conviction. However, just as the prosecutors were finalizing their case, an unexpected development occurred. A witness came forward after viewing a documentary, and their testimony altered the course of the investigation. This individual claimed that Terry had previously confessed to killing his ex-girlfriend and burying her body on his property. Armed with this new information, the police obtained a warrant to search Terry's premises and arrived with a team of forensic specialists. For several days, numerous personnel meticulously examined the area using advanced ground-penetrating radar. Eventually, they made a significant discovery. The radar indicated a section of the concrete floor beneath Terry's bedroom that was approximately the size of a human body. Intriguingly, pieces of rebar had been removed from this specific area, while the rest of the foundation remained fully reinforced. Investigators began excavating and soon uncovered a blanket buried underground, within which they found human remains. These remains were sent to forensic experts, who swiftly confirmed the widely held suspicion that they belonged to Kim. Following this revelation, Terry was arrested and charged with murder. With Kim's body now located beneath his bedroom, the prosecution finally possessed the evidence necessary to secure a conviction. Currently, 67-year-old Terry remains incarcerated, awaiting his trial scheduled for the spring of 2025. In addition to the criminal charges, Kim's daughter has initiated a civil lawsuit against him, seeking damages and aiming to strip him of certain rights. Terry possesses the financial resources necessary to support his defense in the criminal case. It is important to highlight that following Terry's arrest, the original investigative team encountered significant criticism. Kim had previously informed her friends that if she were to go missing, they should search for her on Terry's property. Remarkably, 25 years later, her remains were discovered precisely where she had indicated. To this day, it remains unclear why a comprehensive search of Terry's house and property was not conducted at that time. It is possible that investigators did examine the yard but found no evidence of recent disturbances. Additionally, the exact timing of when Terry buried her beneath his bedroom remains uncertain. He may have initially concealed her body elsewhere and later relocated it under the house after the police completed their preliminary investigation. Regardless, Terry now faces a diminished likelihood of evading justice, and Kim's family has finally been able to provide her with a dignified burial. Please share your thoughts on this narrative in the comments section, and if you appreciated the video, kindly press the like button. Thank you for watching.